Hi friends, welcome back to our tutorials. We are continuing with our Angular 9 full tutorial series, and in today's episode we are going to learn all about Angular services. What are Angular services, why are they important, and how do we use them in our application in real time? We'll learn all about it in today's episode. Welcome back, my name is Sridhar. I bring over 10 years of experience to share with you all on the modern technology frameworks. I'm also here to learn from you all. So during the course of this tutorial series, if you have any doubts, any queries on the code samples or the explanations, feel free to ask me in the comment section below. I'll be happy to help you for free. I'm putting in a lot of hard work in bringing these tutorials for you. So I really appreciate if you can subscribe to my channel and also like the videos. Thank you so much in advance. This is part of the Angular 9 full tutorial playlist where we have now close to 55 tutorials, and the playlist link is in the description box below. Please check it out. Also, again, I will request you, if you have any doubts during in any of the tutorials, just ask me in the comment section. I'll be happy to help you. So we are focusing on the Angular HTTP feature series. From past few episodes, we learned about observables, we learned about dependency injection, and today we are learning about services in Angular. So what you will accomplish at the end of this tutorial? At the end of this tutorial, you will know what are services, how do we generate the service using Angular CLI, understanding the @injectable decorator, how do we import the service and components, and how do we call the methods. This will help you understand and kind of stitch the entire application from services to component to template. Let's get started. So what are services? Services allows us to create reusable, common, shared functionality between various modules and components. Imagine if you want to share some certain functionality between different components. We cannot directly do it, and hence we use services. So we write only once and we will reuse them every time we want to use in any component. Services are singleton, which means they are injected in a particular component that requires it. We learned that this mechanism, we call it as dependency injection. Using dependency injection, we inject the services into the component at runtime. Services are an abstraction layer or process layer which holds your business logic. I'll show you some examples and some real-time use cases. So services are mostly used to make the HTTP requests to our endpoints, and also to make a request and process the response. A service can have a value, it can have methods, or a combination of both. Take an example of this. Take an example. Look at this example that I've put together. So it has three modules. This particular application, let's say it has three modules, which will have a lot of components inside them. They will all share the services which are written once. So let me give you some examples by making some notes before we go into generating and using the services. So let me open it here. Let me make some notes for you. All right. So the first thing we know is services are used for reusing the common shared functionality, right? So when we say this commonly used shared responsibility, let me give you an example here. So let's say we are building, let's say user profiles, right? Or say orders, right? Or leads or contacts. I'll keep it simple in this context. So let's say we are building a contacts. So we will say create contact and view contact. We will have edit contact and we will have delete contact. So if you see, these are all your components, right? So the way you will generate is this will be your module. These are all your components, right? So now we have our components that we identified for a module called component. Now, what we will do is we can write some service, right? We'll write services which are shared. So we will write a common service called contacts.service, right? Now, this file will have all the things required for making HTTP calls, processing data, cleaning data before adding or sending it to. So basically, this is the business logic for contacts. This services will be used in all the components. So that is how you will reuse the services into all the components. That's the beauty about services. So now you can relate to it, that how easy it is that you write only once, reuse it in all the different components. We will see how to do that now. So remember that services are singleton, right? Which means they need to be injected into the components where we want to use them. Unlike components, services need not be included in your modules. And then we can create any number of services. No restriction, right? No restriction to that. No restriction here. Also, services services are used for sharing data between components. Okay, and then the important thing we should know is that importing importing and injecting services into components is called dependency injection. Services are injected at runtime into components, right? So this way the code becomes highly efficient efficient and easy to maintain. The code becomes much easier to test, right? We can we can have we can have a value or a method inside the services. We can have values, we can have methods, or both in the service. You can relate that a service is simply a JavaScript class, right? Is a JavaScript class with methods and variables, right? So this is all about services. So I hope your concepts are clear. I hope you are clear about what services are and how to use them. So let's get started now and see how to use them, how to generate them, how to use them. So how do we generate a service? We can generate a service using Angular CLI, and using that we can run command ng generate service followed by service name. Let's do that now. So the command we will run is ng generate service followed by service name. This name can be anything that we want to give, right? So I'm going to create an from scratch. I want you to know how it works. So I'm going to create a new component as well, just to show you how things are done. So I'm creating a quick component called contacts here, where we will do all the CRUD operations. So here I'm going to run the command ng generate contacts. The contact component is created and it has updated my app module file. Let's take a look at the contacts. It's here. Now I need a route for it. So inside the routing file, I'm going to throw in the route, and that would be simply to track our work. So contacts, and here I'm going to call it contacts component. All right, now let's run the application. In the meanwhile, while it is building, if you're liking the tutorial, give a like to this video. If you have not yet subscribed, kindly do so that you can keep getting notifications when I share more tutorials. Thank you again in advance. Let's give it a minute to build. Also, I encourage you, if you have any doubts, any problems in executing the code, feel free to ask me in the comments. I will be happy to help you. All right, so we have our application. Let's go to the contacts link. So we see contacts works, right? So it's a simple component which has a template, and then we have the mapping. Now let's go ahead and create a service. So here I will say ng generate service, ng generate service, followed by this name of the service. So I'm going to call it contact service, right? You give ng generate service name followed by the name that you want of the service. Again, remember, we can generate these services in any folder, so there is no restriction, right? We can generate the service in any folder we want, right? The best practice is always keep all services related into modules, right? So once you have created the service, let's see the service. So now we see this is the code that is auto generated by the service, and it has the import injectable and angular/core. And then if you see, there is a decorator which says injectable. So this property, this decorator will say that it can be injected into components, right? Since we are using a since we are using injectable, we can always mention that it is can be injectable, right? Decorator uh, informs Angular that we can inject it into components, or it is a service class. Okay, so it's a service class. And the important thing to note here is the value, the service is provided in root, which means it's available across the application, can be injected into any component we need. Okay, that is what this injectable provided in root means. We can also change this, and we can also mention where we want to provide it alternatively, but that we'll see it in some other time. Today let's focus on writing the service. So now that we have our service written, we have written our service and it's ready, I think let's go ahead and write a method, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to write a method. I'm going to call it get contacts. You can name it, you can give any name to the method you want. Now I'm going to write a simple JSON object. It can be any object that we want, but usually you will make a HTTP call. That's what we will learn it in the upcoming tutorials. HTTP calls here, and you get some data. So I'm going to call it contacts list. Contact list is equal to, it's an array and it's an object. So I'm going to say contact ID is 1 and contact name is, you can create any type of JSON object that you want to prefer. There is no restriction to it. YouTube playlists. Okay, just give any name that we want, and let's close it. And this is just returning the contact list. So we have a method which is just returning a JSON array, which is what will come from HTTP calls, right? When we make a HTTP call to endpoint, we will usually get a response which is JSON format. We'll take that and return it. Now this method, this service is complete. Now let's use it in our contacts component. So in the component, what we will do, first thing, we have to import it, right? So here we will have to import it, and we'll say contact service, right? So we have imported the contact service, and then we will give the class that we want. Okay, so once this is done, take this and inject it into the constructor, and we'll call it private. Okay, so we have the service injected, and I'm saying ng on in it. Let's use a variable here and say contact list equal to array, and here I'll say this dot contact list equal to this dot contact service dot method is get methods, right? So we are doing a binding and getting the data from the contact service and using the method get contacts. So see, this is the beauty. Now we have written this method in the service, we are just using it in contacts. We can use it in any component we want, and in any number of components. There is no restriction. You can use it in all components wherever you need it. Now let's go to our template. Let's throw in some h4 list of contacts, right? And for now, I'm just using a ULLI, but you can use anything you want, like a table or any format. I'm using ng for let contact of contact list, right? And here I'm going to write, and using interpolation, I'm saying contact dot contact name. So, all right. So I've just used a simple ng for and looped it into a list of contacts. And now let's go and we see the values are displayed into our contacts uh, page, right? And you see these are values which are not in our component, but they are coming from the service, which is contact service, right? So when we go to contact, you see this is just looping and printing the value, but the actual values are coming from the get contacts method. How we can also make sure that it is the same behavior. So what we can do is we can simply go here, change these values. Okay, and now let's see, it will reload, we'll see the new value. So see, this is the beauty of writing a service, that now look at the component code. It looks so easy, pretty, and easy to maintain, that all the components will just take values from the services, and this way we can reuse it in any number of components we want. This is the same process. You can define any number of methods, right? Let's just write that also. Uh, import the services into any number of components, no issues. we can call any we can call any methods inside the service, right? Similarly, just remember, it's not only read only, we can also pass some values, right? So we can also pass values to methods here when we do it. So we'll learn about that when we hit the HTTP GET client post delete in the upcoming tutorials. But this is what you should be knowing if you want to really work with services in Angular. All right, so we just saw the injectable decorator, how to use that, and we have seen how how it works as part of dependency injection, that it's imported and then it's injected into the constructor and we use it. So these are some of the steps for your nodes. Generate the service, which we did using ngCli, and we have imported the service into the component class. We initialize the constructor method in the dependency injection, and we are calling the methods and properties. Now there is one more way to call it, which is if you want to access it via directly into the template, right? So here if you see, we have called on ng on in it, but let me define one more method into our contact service, and here I'll say calling from template. So this can be any method that you want. Like I said, I'm just showing you the possibilities. Calling from template directly, right? So here I have the contact service. In the contact template, just make sure you make it public, right? Private will not work. So if you want to directly call the method in of method of service, make it public in constructor. Okay, that's important, otherwise it will not work. So now that I have made it public, so what I can do in the template, I can have a link. I'll say click, say button, I'll say click equal to, I'll say what is the name of the uh, thing that we have injected here, contact service, and we can say contact service dot calling from template. So I'm directly calling inside the template. I'm calling the service instance and calling the method. Okay, so let's see this also now. Open the inspect. This is because I've just done a console log. So if you see here the message, let me clear again and click it. So when I click, it says calling from template directly, which is what our contact service did. Nothing much, right? So the idea, you get it, which is either you can call it using a method in your component, which internally calls the method of service, or we can directly call the methods inside the template. All right, so that brings us to the end of learning about services. I hope you really liked and enjoyed this tutorial. In the next tutorial, I'm going to talk about, we will start learning HTTP client of Angular, and we'll start writing and calling some endpoints using our HTTP APIs. Thank you so much for joining. I hope you are liking the series. Give a thumbs up to the video, do subscribe to my channel, ask me if you have any doubts. Thank you.